is a first felony offender. She is serving a life term for the charge of second-degree murder, having been sentenced on November the 22nd of 2002. Ms. Sykes, is that all accurate?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Sykes, your case has been assigned to Mr. Pete Freeman. Mr. Freeman will begin our interview process. Would you please answer any questions he may have? Mr. Freeman?
Okay, Mr. Sykes, how old are you?
62,
And how long have you served on these charges?
20,
Okay. And what is your education level?
I finished high school, started a year in college at Grambling.
Okay. Did you plead to these charges or did you go to trial?
Went to trial.
Okay, so you were found guilty by a jury. Were you seeing Mr. Cox prior to your husband being murdered?
No,
Wasn't seeing him at all.
no,
So all the people that say you were seeing him at a plant and meeting him in Texas and all of that, they lying?
yes.
Okay. Tell me, what was your involvement in the killing?
Well, they're trying to say that I was the one, like, was hiring him to do this, to kill my husband.
Okay, so you had no other involvement?
No, sir.
Did you move that truck?
No, sir.
Why did you admit that you moved the truck?
I never admit I moved the truck.
I think in the ref report, you stated you moved the truck, you and a friend.
No, sir.
Okay. What have you done since you've been in prison? I mean, I see you've done some volunteer work. What all have you done?
I was at a cotton port. I was the head cook. I was over a club for recreation. When I got transferred to LCIW, I started working in the kitchen. And then I went to housekeeping. And now I'm working at the Chapel Library.
Okay. You a member of the Carol's Club?
Kairos, yes, sir.
What is that?
It's where some ladies come from the outside, volunteers. They come in and they show love to the ladies that's here that feel like there's no hope.
Okay. What kind of disciplinary record you've had since you've been there?
A good one.
Okay. Any write-ups at all?
No, sir.
I look at the comments and the DA and the judge are opposed. You got 3 family members unopposed. You got 13 family members that are opposed. What is going to be your transition plan if you get out?
Going to the Louisiana parole project housing.
Okay. What are you going to do from there? What kind of work you did when you was out on the streets?
I did home health and I also worked at ConAgra poultry plant.
So you did have one DB report that was for disobedience back in 4/22/17, but that's still a very good conduct report that you've been in. Your risk score and need score is low. What kind of classes have you taken since you've been there?
I've taken like the Celebrate Recovery, Life Healing Choices, Hannah's Gift, anger management, parenting, substance abuse. And right now I'm enrolled in a life support class that they have here as well as the paralegal with Blackstone.
Okay. Do you have a drug problem? Have you ever used drugs?
No,
Okay, you're just taking those classes for
yes,
better.
yes,
Okay. According to the arrest report, your husband was supposed to be going hunting that morning. Any idea how Mr. Cox would have known where he went hunting?
no,
I have no clue.
Good morning, Ms. Sykes. My name is Bonnie Jackson. I've reviewed your case very closely. And I'll tell you that the thing that stands out for me is your failure to accept any responsibility for your actions. We have all of the police reports. We have all of the records. And so when we ask you about the crime itself, it's not because we don't have the information, and it's not even necessarily that we're judging you on the crime. But for me personally, what I take into consideration is whether or not the person owns up to what they've done. Because if the person is trying to mislead upon the board, then that would tend to make me feel that once released, they would continue to try to con and mislead others about other things, which may lead to more criminal conduct. And so it's very concerning to me personally that you refused, you had a trial. There had to be evidence presented at a trial that would have been sufficient to convince at least 10 people, maybe 12, that you were involved in your husband's death and they found you guilty, and yet you maintained that you had absolutely nothing to do with that. Do you know an individual by the name of Renisha Ford? Renisha Ford.
no,
Oh, that's odd because she wrote a letter in support of you. Are you telling me you don't know Ms. Ford? If I can
No.
find, let me see if I can find her letter. Her letter said that you acknowledged your guilt and that you were very remorseful. That's what she included in her letter. And you're telling me you don't even know who Renisha Ford is.
Are you saying Remisa Ford?
Ever. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I know Remisa Ford, that's my sister.
Oh, well, I mean, it seems to me that you would have figured out that maybe I was mispronouncing her first name. And instead of saying, oh, I don't know her, you would have said, well, that's my sister. Her name is Renisa. But Renisa writes a letter and tells us you acknowledged your mistakes and you're remorseful. And yet I don't see any of that in what you're saying and presenting for right now. So what do you have to say in response to that?
Ma'am, I take full responsibility of my actions
What action?
that I played in this part.
What action? You told us you played no part. So what are you expressing, what are you accepting responsibility for doing? We are asking you specifically, Ms. Sykes, what did you do that led to the death of your husband?
Vernon did call my house, but that was just because he was talking to the children. I had 2 phones.
So what are you taking responsibility? You say I take full responsibility. What are you taking full responsibility for?
Talking to Vernon when he called my home.
And how would that make you responsible for your husband's death?
I never hired no one.
You don't have to pay somebody to encourage or entice them to commit a crime. It doesn't have to be for money, it could be for love.
No, sir, I wasn't, no, ma'am, I wasn't in love with Vernon.
Say you were, he might have been in love with you.
I can't answer that for him.
Well, I'm going to tell you, Ms. Sykes, I am struggling mightily with the fact that you're not being truthful with this board. That is a real problem for me. And you've done some good things, but on the other hand, you've only been in jail a little over 20 years. And for me, truthfulness is extremely important in my decision-making process. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. We will now hear from your supporters. Mr. Kerry Myers.
Good morning, Kerry Myers, Louisiana Parole Project. Parole Project is prepared to offer our services to Ms. Sykes should this board give her a recommendation. Her record during incarceration has been excellent. Her programming has, as obviously you see from her record, her programming is significant. She has strong family support, and should she get a favorable recommendation and become parole eligible, Parole Project will provide our services, which includes transitional housing, which includes programming in things like financial management, social norms, consumer skills, technology, and the things that someone who's spent 20 years in prison would need to do when they re-enter society. So we just want to let this board know that we fully support Ms. Sykes and are prepared to offer our services.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. We'll now hear from your cousin, Luvara Prudham.
Thank you. We are here in support of Elbertine being pardoned. I am very surprised by the letter that was received from her sister because my mother is in constant contact with Elbertine. She has been supporting her since she's been there, and Elbertine has always maintained her innocence in this case. It is very imperative to us that she be released. She spent all of this time since she's been there. It appears that she's had a lot of growth, and she's really needed by her family. Some of her family members are here, and they can attest to she definitely is needed by her sister at this time, who's taking care of her mother, who has dementia. And her sister is also taking care of her own husband, who has dementia, and it's just a lot. So having Elbertine back with her family and also with the community. Before she went in, she was helping disabled parents take care of themselves and their children. And she is an asset to the community. And I believe coming back, she will continue to be an asset to the community. I don't see her as a risk to the community. We don't see her as a risk to the community. And to our family, she will be and is a very valuable asset. She has children that have grown up without her. They now have children. She has grandchildren, great-grandchildren that she has not gotten to know nor be a real part of their lives. So we feel like her being back in the fold and love of her family is very important. And she has support from us. My mom has supported her since she's been there, and we will continue to support her once she is reinstated with her family.
Thank you very much, Ms. Prudham. Now we'll hear from Ms. Amy Yang, who is a friend. Ms. Yang.
Hi, I've known Elbertine since 2000. I was incarcerated since I was 16 years old. So for me, she was a mother figure. She was the one that encouraged me to take Ashland, to take self-help groups and stuff, and to fight my case. I'm currently home and I've been home 3 years, and it's because of her that I got my bachelor's. I was able to buy a car. I was able to buy a house and just open up 2 business because of what she installed in me when we did time together. She nurtured me, and she always was my strength and my supportive. And I know that if she was given that chance, that she would be an outstanding citizen, and that this reentry system will help her so much more. But I know that from doing time with her, she was never a violent person. Everybody loved her. She's never got in trouble. She was always the type that encouraged people to do the right thing, to not fight, not argue, get along. So I know that if she was given the chance, that she would do the right thing. She comes from a lovable family. When I came home, I didn't have nobody, and her family took me in. So I know from her coming from a good background and the way she raised me in prison, because I was a teenager, that I know she'll be a great asset to the world.
Thank you very much, Chang. Now we'll hear from the opposition. Mr. Billy Harrington, the district attorney, Nat.
Go ahead, DJ.
Yes, good morning. My office is opposed as a result of speaking with family members of the victim. We have we're opposed. Case was originally tried under the previous district attorney, Van Kaiser, and Mr. Kaiser has told me that in Vernon Cox's case, he was convicted originally. The case was reversed and was remanded for a retrial. And at that time, Ms. Sykes gave some information to Mr. Kaiser, some witness information that he was not aware of, that helped lead to the conviction to a guilty plea of Vernon Cox at that time. And so I wanted to give you that information also.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harrington. We appreciate your comments. And now we'll hear from the victim's aunt, Ms. Rosie Packett.
Sir,
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
I'm not his aunt.
Okay,
his
I'm
niece.
sorry.
I am his niece.
Okay. I'm sorry, my information was incorrect.
Thank you. What I wanted to express was my uncle had returned back from California in 98, sir, 97. And my uncle was the nicest uncle on this earth. We didn't have but 2 uncles left, and that was him and his brother, which was John Sykes. Again, we were so very excited to see him return back home, and we needed him as well. We don't know how long his life would have been up until this date, but our family needed our uncle as well, sir. To this day, I can still remember when I went where I was and what I was doing when I received a phone call that my uncle was missing. You all will never know how it felt to give my mother and my grandmother the news that my uncle was found. But when he was found, sir, he was deceased, that he was murdered. You weren't there when I had to comfort my grandmother, letting her know that her uncle had been deceased, sir. She cried for a minute, but then after that, she had not processed it. She sat there and all she said was, And then she came back and she asked me again to repeat what I had said. And I told her again that he had died. My grandmother asked why. And I told her at the time, I didn't know why. I promised her that I would fight for her and my mom till I couldn't fight anymore. Well, my grandmother and my mother is gone now. But I know if she was here, she would tell me, continue to fight for him. Fight until the day that I die. Well, we were given a life sentence also, sir. And that was never to see him again. And since that day, we haven't seen him. This was a heinous crime. My uncle may not have known who had anything to do with his life being taken, but today I am his voice. I don't care about the classes you have taken. I don't care about the classes she has taken while she has been incarcerated. And I don't care if she has zero tolerance. I don't care, sir. I still don't have my uncle. And it doesn't change the fact that his life was taken, sir. Sorry about that. I do feel that if she would return back to society, that you will find another elderly man to pray on, that another elderly man would be prayed on. And to this day, she has not taken responsibility for what she has done. It would have been nice to hear her take the responsibility, and it may have given me second thoughts. I've had the thoughts on my mind for the last 20 years. When it came to this day, what would I say and what would I do? I haven't heard the responsibility being taken. There's nothing wrong with taking responsibility. Sometimes you have to let the pride go, sir. Just take the responsibility and whatever comes after that. And then you leave it up to the Lord to do what he has prepared to do. We're without him. And I can say that there is no heaven that cannot, there's no heaven in, excuse me, there's no sorrow that heaven cannot heal. And we're healing, but at the same time, I feel that Miss Elbertine should not be released.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Warden Thomas, could you give us some information on this site?
Good morning. How are you all?
Very well, thank you.
Yeah, just kind of like Mr. Freeman had already mentioned, she has the one disciplinary write-up, but it is a Schedule A write-up, and I think that was from 2017. So definitely has exemplary disciplinary behavior while she's been incarcerated with us. She has continued to participate in various programs, and now, having worked in the kitchen, she is working in our ministry area with faith-based. So
Thank you very much, Warden.
thank you.
Ms. Sykes, is there anything you'd like to say to the board before we vote?
Yes, sir. Over these past years, I reflect on, I cannot change how the Sykes family feel or the victim, but I do take responsibility for my actions. And I know saying I'm sorry is not enough, but I'm the one who have to live with the guilt of my husband's death. And I'm not the same woman sitting here in front of y'all that I was 20 years ago. And I just ask the board to just help mercy. Please, just help mercy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sykes. Is the board ready to vote? Yes.
Okay, Ms. Sykes, I just don't think you're telling us the truth whatsoever. There's just too many statements saying y'all had a relationship prior to your husband's death. Y'all were meeting, were talking. You did move the truck. You got law enforcement opposition and victim opposition. Therefore, I vote to deny.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. Ms. Jackson?
Right. Your institutional record is outstanding, and the good that you've done while incarcerated is commendable. But for me, your lack of candor in this interview has hurt me tremendously. And we've had people who've done really bad, and we were able to not let that influence our decision because the person acknowledged their guilt. They didn't make excuses. They told the truth, and they had accomplished a lot. And many of them had served longer periods of incarceration than we had. But for me, the fact that you just tell the truth about what happened in this case makes me question whether or not, if released, you wouldn't go back to the same habit of manipulating people to get what you want. And because of your lack of candor and strong opposition from the judge, from the DA, from the family in this case, my vote today, likewise, would be to deny. I'm going to encourage you, Ms. Sykes, to look inside yourself and figure out why you can't just, you're serving time now. Not telling the truth is of no benefit to you whatsoever. None whatsoever. And so hopefully you'll stop, trying to minimize what you did, own up to, and perhaps in another opportunity, you might get a different result. But for you today, my brother is to be not. Keep working, keep doing the things that you're doing to serve.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Rochette?
Good morning, Ms. Sykes. Ms. Sykes, you have an opportunity to reapply at the appropriate time. I urge you, from the time you fill out the application, tell the panel the truth. Tell the panel exactly what happened. You started this lie when you filled out your application. And I read your statement. You said you were completely innocent. You had nothing to do with it. And you continue that lie today. I'm voting against you basically because the lack of responsibility and insufficient time served for a second-degree murder charge. You also have law enforcement opposition, the DA's opposed, and the victim's family is adamantly opposed. But you really need to take Ms. Jackson's advice and re-examine your conscience and make sure next time you take full responsibility and tell the panel what really happened in the murder of your husband.
Thank you, Mr. Rochette. Ms. Sykes, I'm not going to belabor the issue. My colleagues have spoken very prominently on the issue that I see as well. I've been in the criminal justice system a long time. I believe in the presumption of innocence, and I believe in the right of a person, even after convicted, to claim they didn't do it, if that's their position. But the evidence clearly points that you had a lot more to do with this than you're willing to admit. And what bothers me almost as much is the fact that you knew who Ms. Jackson was asking you about, if you knew her or not. And you said, oh, no, I don't know that person. Ms. Jackson didn't even tell you what was in the letter. She just said, do you know her? And you said, oh, no, I don't know who that person is. And I think that's because you were afraid of what she might have said. You really do need to be honest. And if honesty is you didn't really have anything to do with it, then there's no responsibility to take. Take the position that I didn't do it. And I'm serving my time and I'm going to be honest about it. You really do need to look inside and try to figure out why it is you came here with the attitude of not telling us the complete truth. So I also, like Mr. Roche, encourage you to reapply. You've done a lot of good things while you've been in prison. You've helped a lot of people. Ms. Yang spoke of you as a mother people. You've done some very, very good things. You need to work a little bit more on yourself and be more honest. Yourself as well as us. So you have 4 votes to deny your parole. Your pardon has been denied today. Good luck to you. Continue to work hard and reapply when you're able to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Now we're going to do something which I love doing, which is thanks to Richard connecting the dots. We're going to go and watch her co-defendant's parole hearing. Now, she just had a commutation hearing because she was given life. Her co-defendant was only given, I think, 50 years. and is having his parole hearing. So we'll go and see what story he spins in a moment. Now, before we do that, I'm trying to, I've been trying to think, do we want to first hear his parole hearing and then go over the facts, or review the facts of the case and then listen to his parole hearing? And I'm not quite sure what the best mode is to do. So love for you to share in the comment section what you prefer. But I do first want to talk a little bit about that hearing. And it was, I mean, she just came in lie, just straight up lying, of course. And you might argue, well, maybe she really is innocent of the crime. And it's going to be interesting to go over these reports, to the appeal, to see what evidence they did have, and listen to her co-defendant and see how you feel about it. Like Miss Jackson said, there's no benefit to saying that you're innocent. We have seen a few that have come up for parole that have insisted on their innocence, but they insisted on it through the entire hearing. They didn't say the whole fickle thing like, I'm so sorry, I wish I could take it. Like Mr. Mirabella said, it's like, what are you regretful for, right? And Miss Jackson said, what are you sorry for? You can't take it both ways. If you're going to go in and say you're innocent, then stick with it. There's a playlist we have that says wrongfully convicted. I'll put this in here, and you can see the other cases by checking out that playlist. But she, really just loses all credibility with the way that she handled the hearings, starting off with pretending that she didn't know who her sister was. Like Miss Jackson called her out on it, saying, you didn't know what was in the letter, so you just pretended that that you didn't even know the name. And it's like, really? All 20 years later, and this is how you come into your commutation hearing with like zero ability to control your own lies? And it does make me wonder, like, what is the parole project? Do they spend time with her? Do they take a meeting and say, hey, this is the strategy that you should take at your commutation hearing? This is what the board wants to hear. Do they have that conversation, and does she just not care? Or do they just not put in any effort? And also what was interesting is what was it? Her other sister said, I'm so shocked. I don't know why. I'm surprised by the letter that she received by the sister. She's always insisted on her innocence, and she's innocent. And it is confusing. That is very confusing, right? Because why would you think that her sister is? It's just it is mind-boggling. So I think what I'll do is I'll go over a little bit of the case, so we'll have some context, and then we'll go into the parole hearing. And then when we're done with her co-defendant's parole hearing, we can go and finish this. So on November 11th, 1999, the defendant called the sheriff's office and reported her husband missing. Oh no, where's my husband? The defendant stated that her husband had been missing since 6 o'clock the previous morning. So it's now going on 24 hours. November 10th, 1999. According to the defendant, her husband went hunting, but she did not know if he went hunting at St. Maurice or Limekiln. She knew he went hunting with a nephew, but did not know the nephew's name. Detective Mike Wilson was notified of the victim's disappearance. On his way to interview the defendant, the detective learned that the victim's truck had been found on Limekiln Road. Although the vehicle was thoroughly searched, no evidence was found. When Detective Wilson spoke with the defendant, she reiterated that her husband had gone hunting the previous morning and had not returned. She gave a physical description of her husband as well as the vehicle he was driving. According to Detective Wilson, the defendant did not mention Vernon Cox or Limekiln Road during her initial interview. It's interesting. At one point in my life, I lived off of Lime Kiln Road, not Lime Kiln. Okay. Later on November 11th, 1999, the detective took a recorded statement from the defendant. The defendant again stated that her husband left around 6 in the morning. The defendant maintained, so this is now her second interview. The defendant maintained that she did not know which nephew accompanied her husband on the hunting trip. The defendant had gone to court that morning and arrived back around 12:30. She'd gone to court. Why? Later, around 3:15 or 3:30 p.m., the defendant went to work. The defendant made a few calls, received a few calls at work concerning the victim's whereabouts. The defendant arrived at home around 12:30 a.m. On Friday, November 12th, the defendant called Detective Wilson to tell him she received an anonymous call. So here's where it starts, right? It's she's interviewed twice, and then she calls the detective. A woman called me. She was anonymous, and she told me she saw the victim's truck at the end of Lime Kiln Road. That's what she tells the detective. It's like, really? So I guess she didn't know the detectives found the truck already, right? She had no idea. They of course didn't tell her, and she's like, they should go find his body. They should find his truck. So she made up this fake anonymous call. The defendant asked the detective to go look at the end for her husband. Wow, yeah, I know. She's so intelligent. It's like, why not just wait? Just wait. But no, she couldn't help herself. On Saturday, November 13th, the detective went back to Lime Kiln Road with some others, and after a 3.5 hour search, one of the deputies spotted a sweater in the bushes. According to Detective Wilson, the sweater was white with multiple colors on it, and it was not there the day before. It was not there the day before. Huh. A member of the search team identified the sweater as belonging to the victim. The victim's body was discovered approximately 30 to 45 minutes later at the end of the road. The victim was found lying on his back with a 12-gauge shotgun lying 2 to 3 feet from his body. According to Detective Wilson, the gun had nothing to do with the homicide. When asked if any money was found on the victim, Detective Wilson stated that a small amount of change was found in his pocket. So the coroner was called out to the scene and found multiple skull fractures after examining his body. Feeling that the victim's death was not accidental, the coroner arranged for an autopsy. Dr. Stephen Cogswell performed an autopsy and found that the victim received a close-range shotgun wound to the back of the head. Wow. So at first glance, they thought it was just like skull fractures, but because of the autopsy, only then did they realize it was a shotgun blast. Dr. Cogswell determined that a person shot the victim from behind with the barrel of the gun less than 3 feet away from the victim's head. The shot was also angled forward and upward. So it wasn't like, execution style. It was probably whoever was walking behind him. The wadding, as well as the shot charge, actually went into the victim's head. That's how close he was, or she was. Someone was. According to Dr. Cogswell, the victim had no defensive injuries, no injuries to his hands or face, and no signs of a struggle. No broken buttons, no torn pockets. So because of the nature of the wound, the doctor opined the victim's death was instantaneous, and any object he was holding would have most likely fallen right where he was holding it. So the shotgun was placed there. Dr. Cogswell described the victim's body as being mildly decomposed, although no one argues that the victim was killed on a different day. The doctor suggested that since the temperatures in mid-November are generally mild, the victim would have reached a moderate level of decomposition if he was killed on Wednesday and found Saturday. So again, it was Wednesday that he was missing, Saturday that they found him. I wonder if they placed the body there. Is that what they're going with? Now, I'm kind of still interested to continue reading this before moving to the next parole hearing. So I don't know. Again, let me know what you prefer in the comments section. Based on a phone call to the city police approximately 5 to 6 months before the victims. So now they're going back in time. 5 to 6 months before the victim life was taken, the investigation began to focus on Vernon Cox, the defendant's ex-husband, and this is whose hearing we're going to see. The phone call was made by Mr. Cox's twin sister, Vivian Cox. During her own testimony, Ms. Gahee testified that her brother, Vernon, lived with her in Houston. The defendant and some of her children visited Mr. Cox one weekend in 1999. According to Ms. Gahee, the defendant and Mr. Cox in constant contact after the visit, talking with one another about once a day. So this is where they're saying maybe they're fleeing because they were married, they got divorced, and maybe they picked it up again. Is that what her sisters? Listen, one day after the defendant's visit, Mr. Cox borrowed his sister's vehicle but did not return it as planned. Instead, Ms. Gahee received a call informing her that her car had been damaged and the tires were taken off. When Ms. Gahee talked with Mr. Cox a couple of months later, Mr. Cox was in rehabilitation center in Alexandria, Louisiana. I'm not understanding though. See this? Mr. Cox told his sister that he was under a lot of pressure because the defendant wanted him to kill her husband. Okay, so again, this is 6 months before. And I suppose this is her testifying, but now he's saying he was stressed because she wanted him to kill her husband, but Mr. Cox assured his sister he was not going to do what the defendant asked. Ms. Gahee agreed that Mr. Cox told her of the defendant's request in the summer of 1999, and Mr. Cox was, when the homicide occurred, Mr. Gahee called the police department and reported what her brother told her, Ms. Gahee. After learning of Ms. Gahee's phone call and picking up Mr. Cox, Detective Wilson spoke with the defendant again. Detective Wilson explained to the defendant that Mr. Cox had been taken into custody and was being interviewed in connection with her husband's death. And this is when it all unraveled. And all because his twin sister told on him. That's intense. I mean, twins. A twin telling on a twin. I mean, wow. Just on a statement too, you know? Detective Wilson took another recorded statement from the defendant on November 17, 1999. Detective Wilson described the defendant as being extremely nervous, continuously rubbing her hands and looking back and forth out the window. At the beginning of the statement, the defendant told Detective Wilson that she only contacted Mr. Cox when she needed help with her children or when he needed to borrow money. When asked when she last had a face-to-face conversation with Mr. Cox, the defendant stated that at Mr. Cox's request, she met him at the college campus and spoke with him. The defendant stated that she and Mr. Cox talked about money, and Mr. Cox asked if her husband's body had been found. According to the defendant, Mr. Cox also went to her residence one night, but was told to leave by her brother. The tape recorder was turned off for a period during which the defendant asked Mr. Cox. Arrest Detective Wilson told the defendant Mr. Cox had been arrested and was speaking with him. According to Detective Wilson, the defendant stopped him during their conversation and stated he did it. Well, this is actually, you're saying when the tape recorder was off, he confessed? Isn't that convenient? The defendant elaborated that Mr. Cox killed her husband. The tape recorder was turned back on, and Detective Wilson asked the defendant if she discussed with anyone about any harm coming to her husband. The defendant responded, Vernon had mentioned several times that he was going to rob my husband. Mr. Cox asked how much money her husband carried on him. The defendant told him he carried $2,000 to $3,000. When asked if she talked to Mr. Cox on November 10th or any day prior about her husband, the defendant responded, who carries $2,000 to $3,000 in the late 90s too? It's possible that I'm not sure. I did speak with Vernon. Vernon did ask me, did my husband go hunting? And I said, yes, he goes hunting. He asked, where did he go at? I told him that from St. Maurice over 84, as he goes on 71, and he hunts on his property back there. Prior to me talking to Vernon, Vernon had told me that one of the nephews that worked with him at the previous job had told him that William was a big-time dealer and that he carries a lot of money and he was going to rob him. The defendant explained Mr. Cox, not the nephew, said he was going to rob her husband. When the detective Wilson asked the defendant if Mr. Cox ever told her he was going to rob her husband, the defendant replied, "He never told me he was going to rob him. He asked me how much money did he carry on him. I told him about $2,000 to $3,000. When Vernon asked me about it on the day that he said he was going hunting, I didn't let him carry that much money. He only had $200 on him." This is confusing. Is this not confusing? This is confusing to me. I'm a little bit. I mean, I get. So they found them dead. She reported him missing initially. Then she said an anonymous woman told her where his truck was. They found the truck. They seemed to have found an item that they claimed was not still there. They interviewed her. They claim she's nervous. Then they got a tip from his twin sister saying that he had been pressured to kill him, and then they detained him, and then she's claiming that he wanted to rob her husband, and she also made a statement that he killed her, but when the recording was off. There is something interesting that Richard found that I haven't seen. It says it says that to her husband, Willie, a life estate and real property, allowing him to live in the property as long as he lived. That upon the death, Maggie Lee Sykes was be given to his daughter, further blah, blah, blah. So there's like some money and property. It's like a whole will. And I think there's like some type of lawsuit around it. But okay, so let's go into the next parole hearing of the accused of taking it, and then let's come back to this. And I'll give you some forewarning. The sound quality is not great because he's in a cell that has an echo. Miss Jackson does a good job repeating kind of like what he says, and then the sound does improve a little bit later. But so you'll just have to bear with me on this.
Classified as a fourth felony offender, offense manslaughter. Sentencing date, January 17, 2006. Sentenced to a total of 35 years. Parole date, August 1st, 2021. Good time, not eligible. Full term, November 15, 2034. Is this information correct, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Cox. How are you?
Well, fine, how are you?
Fine. The acoustics in the room where you are aren't very good. So I'm going to need you to be as close to the microphone as you can get, and also to speak up because there's quite an echo in the room. You're 64 years old, Mr. Cox,
Yes, ma'am.
and you're serving a 35-year sentence for manslaughter.
Yes, ma'am.
How much of that sentence have you served? How long have you been incarcerated?
21 going on 22.
Okay. This case involved the death of a gentleman who was the husband of your former wife. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And you and she kind of conspired to commit this crime. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you explain to us what was going on and how you came to be involved in this offense?
Well, we ended up going on a hunting trip, and me and Mr. Sykes ended up getting into a heated argument, and one thing led to another, and I ended up killing Mr. Sykes.
Okay, no, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. You and his wife planned to commit this crime and make it look like, maybe an accident or that he was missing. Mr. Cox, we have the records in front of us. And so when we ask you to tell us what happened, it's not because we don't know. We ask to see how honest you're going to be. And people always say they take.
Trying to cut out some of the echo for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. People, when we've done these hearings and people like to tell us that they accept responsibility for their actions. And so one way of doing that is showing that that's sincere and not something you just learned to say as part of the process, is to see whether or not you're going to be honest about what happened.
Yes, ma'am.
So would you like to start over and tell us what happened?
Well, the reason why I said that because this is what I was told to stay through the DA. This is what they told me to stay through.
Well, first of all, you were there. You know what happened. Why the DA didn't tell you what to say today?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It was all in the process, When I made the statement back then, that's what they had told me.
I'm asking you today. What happened? I'm not asking you what you said back then. I'm asking you, what do you say today?
It was all a conspiracy to kill Mr. Sykes, to plan on Elbertine wanted her husband dead, for collecting the insurance and to inherit properties and assets and stuff like that.
Okay, well, why would you allow yourself to become involved in that?
Well, she knew I was pretty strung out on drugs during that time, and she kept feeding me drugs.
Feeding you drugs. You took drugs. She didn't force them down your throat.
No, ma'am, she took advantage of my situation.
And what kind of drugs did you use, Mr. Cox?
Crack cocaine.
And how long have you been using crack cocaine?
I've been using drugs since the late 80s.
Okay. Well, I'm your fourth offender, and I was looking at your criminal history. You had a simple robbery from 1978. You had a possession of a firearm by a felon in 83. That was in federal court. You had a probated sentence in federal court, and that was revoked, and you had to serve 18 months. In 1985, you had a simple burglary where you served 18 months. It looked like you went to Little Rock, Arkansas, and picked up a charge there. That was a forgery in 89. Is that correct? And then in 91, I see an auto theft. Is that correct?
91, no, ma'am, I was incarcerated.
Okay. Well, maybe you got the charge, because I show you got 2 years on it. Maybe it happened before you were incarcerated, but you maybe pled guilty to it or got sentenced on it after that. You remember that? Does that sound about right?
I looked at my rap sheet, but I wasn't familiar with that charge.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. What I don't see is any arrest for drug charges. which is unusual for someone who says they're strung out on crack cocaine. It's just unusual that you wouldn't have a single arrest for possession of drugs. That's all. That's the only reason I'm asking that.
I got a drug charge when I was in Houston.
Okay, well, obviously that didn't show up on your criminal history. Was it a conviction?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you serve any time on it?
For 2 years.
2 years?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you arrested in Houston in a stolen vehicle?
No, ma'am.
All right. All right. So you've been in a little under 22 years. First, how long have you been at the facility that you're currently in?
3 years.
Okay. And what do you do there? Do you have a job there?
No, ma'am. It's just constantly on the 1 year.
Okay. Where did you serve most of your time?
At Winfield in Angola.
Okay. Well, how long were you in Angola?
Not very long. After the conviction got overturned, I went back and, excuse me, I served the majority of the time at Winfield.
Okay, so most of your sentence was in Winfield.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have a job while you were at Winfield?
Yes, ma'am.
What was your job there?
I worked at culinary, not culinary, the garment factory, the lawnmower crew, and also worked as a yard man.
Okay. And how did you end up getting transferred from Winfield to where you are now?
They came on a chair one day and I picked a few guys off the chair, excuse me, and sent me to a lockdown, and I got shipped the next following day.
Oh, I mean, they didn't just come and get you off the chair to put you in lockdown. What was the write-up that got you in lockdown?
They never served me a write-up.
But you went to lockdown and they never told you a write-up?
Man, they never gave me a write-up. I think it was mostly behind I was working for Miss Hayes, and they was trying to say I had a relationship with Miss Hayes, but they never received a write-up.
And because of that, you were transferred to where you are now.
Yes, ma'am.
How many write-ups have you had over the course of your 21 plus years?
I think I had maybe 14 or 15 or 16.
Okay. And the last one was the one that got you transferred to where you are?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. The last one I got was received a theft charge. I worked in
Was that where you are now?
Ma'am.
Did you get that write-up at the institution you're in right now?
No, ma'am. I got it. The last write-up I got was in Winfield.
Okay, and that was what was that for?
That was for not receiving, they said I had stole some elastic, but the guard gave me some elastic, but I got caught on the walk with it and he woke me up as
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were accused of taking.
Elastic.
Okay.
And I got caught on the walk with it and the guard woke me up for therapy.
All right. Why did you need elastic?
Well, I would make a workout for my arms.
Okay, I understood. Okay. Well, tell me some of the programs that you've taken over the last 22 years.
I took up change man from the inside out, thanking for a change, car roll, cleansing screen, 12-step, NAAA, Cajun Rage, new beginning class, building social network, 21-hour prescription for thinking for a change, social skills, few other, classes I took. That's about it, ma'am.
Okay, when did you take all of those, the thinking for a change and, Cage Your Rage? Did you take those at Morehouse?
No, ma'am, I took it at Winfield.
That's what I meant Winfield, I'm sorry. And how long ago was that?
I started in 2010 because when I first got there, I started getting in class, trying to get in class. They were telling me I had too much time, so I had to get the warden to give me approval to take classes, you know, because it was just on a short term. People who had short time, and they said I had too much time.
Okay. And so, tell me about thinking for a change. What did you get out of that class?
I look at thinking for change as I don't see life as I used to see it. I look at it in a different perspective now. Mostly trying to help the youth, young men like myself.
I'm not asking you that. I'm asking you, what did you get out of the class?
Get out of the class.
How did it change you?
Well, I look at life different, man.
How did you look at it before?
As not being, in other words, not being born again. I just don't do the things that I used to do. I think the things out now.
Okay. And what about Cage Your Rage? What did you get out of that?
Well, control my anger, you know. I was my own enemy, you know. I didn't have any control of my anger, you know. So I thank God for giving me peace within myself that I think now before I act.
And you did some NA and AA meetings?
Yes, ma'am.
When did you do those?
I did it when I was in Winfield.
How long were you in those in NA or AA classes?
I took 12 steps in 2014. In NAAA, I took it in 2016. I took it on several occasions, you know.
Okay, but tell me what you got out of that. What was helpful for you?
Well, like I said, drugs have been a part of my problem the majority of my life. When I came to jail, I made a decision to stop drugging. So I've been drug free for 21 years right now, and I try to stir other people from away from drugs.
Okay, but what did you learn about your addiction when you were in AA or NA?
I learned that I don't need them in my life, man. I just take one day at a time now. I accept things the way I accept things the way it is, and things I can't change. I try to live my life by that.
Okay, you're familiar with the 12-step program, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
What did the 12-step program teach you?
Well, basically teach me that I have to take responsibility for the things of what I do.
Do you consider yourself a drug addict?
Well, I put myself as being a recovered drug addict. I've been free for 21 years right now, ma'am, and I just take one day at a time. I'm overcoming it.
Let me ask you this. What does recovered drug addict mean to you?
A recovered drug addict, stay free.
Say that again.
Stay drug free.
No. Are you a drug addict today?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
When I came to jail, I made my mind up, you know, to take the wheel, have the willpower to say no.
Okay, Mr. Cox, if you went through the 12-step program and NA, one of the things that you should have learned is that once a drug addict, always a drug addict. but you're telling me you're not. So
I'm
my
not.
question is, what?
Because when I stand for the thing that being born again Christian, you know,
So when, okay, stop talking. So you don't believe the principle that once a drug addict, always a drug addict?
yes, ma'am, it's true.
Well, then why are you saying you're not a drug addict?
Because I truly believe that once the Son sets you free, I'm free indeed. So I've been free for 21 years, man. No drugs, no alcohol, no nothing.
Well, it's not like they're serving cocktails at the prison. You know, I know there's some opportunity to get drinks or mojo or whatever, but it's not like it is when you're on the street.
I've seen it all.
I understand. But again, you don't have the freedom to go to bars. You don't have the freedom to hang out with people who are sitting around having a beer or a drink. You don't have, you don't have the freedom to, be around people that smoke marijuana because you're confined. The test isn't what you're doing now. It's how are you going to maintain your sobriety if you're fortunate enough to get out of jail. And if willpower was enough, then we wouldn't have any drug addicts because nobody wants to be an addict. And if willpower was enough, then people would just stop. But we know that's not true, right? So what do you think you need or a drug addict would need to stay clean?
Go to my meetings and attend meetings and just try to stay drug free, man.
Okay. Can I speak with the person in the room with Mr. Cox? Can you tell us anything about his performance since he's been at your facility?
Ms. Jackson, spare me just a minute, I'll get Lieutenant Johnson in here.
Okay, that'll be fine. That'll be fine.
Cox and been around him a lot longer than I have.
Okay. Sure, go ahead.
Can you come on forward, please?
You want me to ask some questions?
Yeah, I was gonna say, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and ask your questions, Mr. Wise, while we're waiting.
Well, first of all, Mr. Cox, I do want to say this. I looked at the DOC, the Department of Correction has a programs completion program on 1059 and 127 of 2022. It says you completed a anger management in Cage and Rage in 2015 and Thinking for a Change in 2016. That's the programs that we have down that you've completed. That's set up inside your record. All right, as I go back through here, I want to say good afternoon, Mr. Dice. How you doing?
You're muted, sir.
As I go along here,
Am I unmuted?
As I go along here, yeah, you unmuted, Mr. Dice. How you doing?
Fine, Mr. Jim. Thank you. How you been? Thank y'all for hearing this
doing
today.
Good, doing good. I hear you. You know, as I look back over your record, I just want to say this. I look back over your record here. Back in 1977, you had an armed robbery. In 83, alcohol and tobacco firearm. And in 83, U.S. Marshals, you were arrested for making false statements. In which today, when you came in, I know the statements went from, I know you're nervous, Ms. Cox, I know you're nervous, but you told her one thing, you went back and forth. And then in 83, you had a simple burglary, knackered and stolen things in 89. And in 89, you had a forgery, aggravated robbery of a man. And then in 99, a simple burglary. I'm just trying to go over some of your, and then the first degree murder which was amended to manslaughter. You had some charges over in Texas at one time, and that brings you up to be a fourth offender. You know, we've seen people today, a lot of people has been manslaughters and different things. They had lots of programs. I'm talking about programs on top of programs, serious programs. You've been to Angola where you could do some programs, and Winfield, they got a good place where you can do programs. But one of the things I'm hitting at, when you tell somebody something, shoot straight with them. I mean, we already know what you did. You can't hide from us. I mean, we got all the paperwork and everything. I want you to just be straight. I know you're nervous. This is a big day for you. You got a 35-year sentence. You spent 21 days of it, you know, 21 years of it. And, but some of the things here that we have to pull out of you, and maybe that may have been what Miss Jackson was doing, pulling out of it just to say about your credibility, but it didn't set well with me. I can tell you that. So I just want to tell you there's victims, and also you got some support here today, and it's done. There's nothing we can do to turn it around. This was a horrible crime the way it took place, and I know that. But this time I don't have any other questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. I need the person who can tell us about Mr. Franklin back in the room. I'm sorry, he left.
I need you in here now.
Okay, he's back.
All right, what can you tell us about Mr. Cox since he's been at your facility?
He's coming.
Okay.
Don't appoint Ms. Jackson.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait.
Yes, ma'am.
I tell you, until he gets back, let's just go on, because you know, he may have to leave or something. We'll be sitting here and see what we got. I don't know where he's.
Well, we can go on with the rest of our speakers. Bonnie, do you have any further questions of
No,
Mr.
no.
Cox?
No.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and go forward with our speakers, and then we'll come back to whoever comes back into the cell.
There he is.
Here
Hold
he
on.
is. Here he
Okay.
is.
All right.
Sorry about that, ma'am. I've been running back and forth.
That's okay. I understand you run a prison. What can you tell us about Mr. Cox since he's been at your facility?
Since Mr. Cox has been at our facility, he's not caused any problems. He hasn't had any write-ups in 3 years. I do know that he helps out in the dorm that he's in. He's in deep form. He's ensuring that it keeps clean, and that any problems we have, that he lets us know about.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That's all I have, Ms. Marabella.
Thank you. We have some speakers.
First, we will hear from Mr. Michael Hardison, brother-in-law.
Good afternoon. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry about the technical difficulty. My name is Mike Hardison, and first of all, I want to say thank you, Mr. Arabello, Ms. Jackson, and Mr. Wise for this opportunity. I also want to acknowledge the Sykes family as we continue to pray for them and hope that they will find in their heart to forgive Vernon. But again, my name is Mike Hardison, and I'm here today on behalf of Vernon Cox, who is my brother-in-law, someone who I have known for some 20 plus years. And, you know, I have visited him several times when he was in Wynn Correctional Facility. And, you know, I just believe after 20 plus years of being incarcerated that Vernon is a changed man. I have noticed on the different occasions that I've visited with him, as well as talked on the phone with him, He never made any excuses. I think he was aware of what was going on as it pertains to his case. But after participating in a bunch of the some of the meetings that I think he's been a part of, I observed a man that always had hope and believed that one day this day would come. And I believe, you know, while he's been in there, he's lost his mother, he's lost his dad, and this has been a day that he's been looking forward to. So I see him as a man of conviction, a man of compassion, a man of faith. The things that he plans to do if he's paroled would be to, and he said it earlier today, to help the youth. And that's what he's doing even in his dorm right now. So he comes from a great family. And I think we have established a great support system that will support him greatly if he's paroled, or when he's paroled, or whenever he get out. It's going to be a smooth transition from incarceration to freedom. And so myself, among many other men of the cloth, have said that we will be there to help him work the ministry that he believed that God has called him to now, which is to deal with the young people. And also, his family is on the YouTube watching. He had another sister that was going to come on, but something happened during the Zoom registration process where we were told that it was only one person. So with that said, you know, I feel like Vernon is a restored man. Vernon is not the same man that he was back in the 80s, when there are some things that he perhaps may have done that was not good. So I see him today as a man that has been redeemed and is ready to move on with his life.
Thank you. Teresa, are you ready with our next speaker?
Yes, ma'am. Our last speaker is Miss Rosie Hackett.
Excuse me. Good evening, honorable members of the parole board. Thank you for having me. My name is Rosie Hackett, and I'm the late great niece of William Sykes, and I'm here to be the voice of my Uncle William. When Mr. Cox said that he was a changed man, and Mr. Addison just spoke and said that about his Christian beliefs, and Mr. Cox getting out of prison to work with the children and stuff. I have noticed that a lot of prisoners come out of prison using the church, or using the pulpit, saying that they're a changed person. But in my heart, several of them that come out, I see that they only just use the church mainly just for a personal gain. That when they can't get a job out in the public or something, then all of a sudden they go and establish a new church when the community may already have 15 churches, but they'll, establish a new church, just to have a personal gain. And I don't be seeing a whole lot of change, in the ministers that, had been incarcerated. And I don't understand why, would they use the Lord name in vain. When my uncle was killed, ma'am, it turned my life around. It turned my family life around. My uncle had just retired from California, moved to Louisiana to enjoy the last few days or few years of his life. My family, the Sykes family, which is my grandmother, Sykes family as well, their family have longevity lives because of their genes, 95, 96, and possibly 97 years of living. My grandmother passed away at the age of 95, and her sisters as well. And so I looked it forward to spending those days with my uncle. When my mother and I, when my uncle returned from California, my mother and I met him at church. It was such a joy. It was just such a joy to see my mom fall in her uncle's arms. And he was just so happy to see her as well as he was happy to see me. And by Mr. Cox and the other lady that was involved as well, they took that from us. I no longer had that opportunity to have the conversations with my uncle so he could tell me about the good old days and where I could write some things down and look up, for the ancestry. Now that I go to the ancestry, now I find my uncle's name in the ancestries and it hurts. I live in Nulano, Louisiana, which is next door to Leesville. And in order to go to Natchitoches, I have to travel down Highway 117. Then once I enter Highway 117 in Hagewood, I travel Highway 6. As I travel Highway 6, going into Natchitoches Parish, passing Popeye's Chicken, the first road on the right-hand side is Limekill Road. Limekill Road, I hate to see the sign, Limekill Road. Every time I pass that road, it reminds me of my uncle being murdered. Not one time now, not two times. Sometimes I try to turn my head just to keep from seeing the sign. At one time, I wanted to ask them, could they just change the name of this road to a different name? But it still wouldn't matter because I still would know that my uncle was killed on Limekill Road. And so it has been embedded in my mind and it's always gonna be there. Today was the first time that I have heard Mr. Cox admitted to killing my uncle during the trial and after the trial. It was always said that he didn't do it. We visited with his parents as well, my relatives and I, because we just wanted to get a better understanding. And it was always said that he always, told us that he didn't kill him. And now today was the first time that I'm hearing him admit that he didn't kill my uncle. And so I wanted to, him to know that our family suffered an unspeakable loss due to the inhumanity from Mr. Cox. It, being shot, being killed the way he was, and then being left from our understanding in the autopsy, he was placed there. His body was brought back there and just
Ms. Hackett, could you wrap it up in just a few seconds, please?
Yes, sir, I can. And just being left there. But I oppose Mr. Cox being released. Maybe it's just going to take some time for myself, to understand why would a person take somebody's life. But I put it in the hands of God and I ask God to forgive him and move forward from there.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
That is all of our speakers.
Thank you. Mr. Dias, would you like Mr. Cox to make his statement and then you follow up with the statement, or?
Yes,
how would
that'd
you
be
want?
fine. Judge,
Okay.
that'd be fine.
Mr. Cox, is there something you'd like to tell the board before we hear Mr. Dias and then we vote?
Yes, to the Sykes family, I meant that I did a hard act by killing Mr. Sykes. And I did admit that he did get killed on Limekill Road. Now, no one took that body away from that. That's when he got killed. And I'm sorry for the act I did. I just want to let you know, there was nobody else involved in that but me and the Elbertine Sykes. No one else. They were trying to get me to put in somebody else in there, but I wouldn't tell that lie for anybody else. And I just want to let you know, I pray for that, ask for your forgiveness.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Dias, if you want to close.
Right. Yes, I will. First, thank you for hearing the matter today. Let's think about his age, how long he served. Yes, there's no deniable, it's not deniable that what happened is horrible. I've heard from the speaker, I've heard from his brother-in-law. I've heard from his niece, I think it is. We make a decision. Y'all have to make a decision. I believe it's important to have heard what the people from where he is now in jail, that he hasn't done anything. And we're kind of the way I'm in this thing, and his sisters have both worked for me. I have one sister now working for me. They live over here in Natchitoches by a Super One store. It's the old home place, and he would have a place to live, and he would have, I understand that he's located a job, or they're helping him find a job. I mean, to continue him in prison is certainly a hardship on our state, and I know he has to suffer the punishment, but based upon recent law and Justice Reinvention Act, et cetera, I mean, he served a lot of time, and consider his age under those new provisions of the law. I just ask you to consider, I mean, he can live over there with his sister who works for me. He can be placed, I understand, he'd be on parole, with parole officer would be checking on him, and he'd have, I understand, a job and a home, and whatever conditions, of course, the Department of Corrections would place on him, whether it be ongoing classes, ongoing trust. I don't know what it would be, but I would ask that you consider allowing him to be released. And there may be a program that I'm not aware of where there's a reentry program where he has to go through some reentry process before release, considering that he's been in jail so long. I mean, a lot of things have changed in 22 years. And that's what I'd ask you to consider. I don't think keeping him in jail another 10, 15 years or whatever it is going to benefit our society.
Thank you, Mr. Dias. Appreciate your comments. Is the panel ready to vote?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Mr. Cox, this is a hard one. It really is. First, Ms. Hackett, I appreciate your being here. I appreciate what it took for you to participate. And I appreciate what you're going through and what your family has gone through. And I want you to know that I don't make light of that at all. Mr. Cox, I wish you had started the interview the way you ended it. I wish you had owned responsibility from the very beginning. I think that would have, gone over a lot better than what you said. But I will chalk that up to your being nervous and this being a big day for you. And you were afraid that if you told the truth, it might not go well for you. I understand that. But again, I wish you had started off just being honest. You are 64 years old. You've served almost 22 years in prison. You have a really, bad criminal history. But in spite of that, you have a low risk score. I don't understand why you didn't take any more programs than you have. I don't, because you've had 22 years to get some in. On the other hand, there are a lot of letters of support on your behalf that were submitted to the board. There were a lot of people who wrote us telling us the positive impact that you have had on them in their lives. And although I'm disappointed in your interview, Mr. Cox, I am inclined today to give you a chance because of your age and because of the length of time that you have served. So my vote today would be to grant. Let me ask you this. Where do you plan to live, Mr. Cox?
With my sister at my mother's house in Natchitoches.
All right. All right. Well, my vote today would be to grant with conditions that you attend at least 3 AA or NA meetings per week, that you report to your parole officer weekly for the first 90 days, and that you abide by a 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew. That's my vote, Mr. Cox, but I'm only one vote.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. Mr. Wise? You're on mute, Mr. Wise.
A lot of things during your interview was back and forth, but one of the problems I have, I want you to know, there's a lot of stuff you need, some more programs you need to get. I don't think you have enough programs, your age and everything. You'll be able to come back before the board here pretty quick, but I want to make sure you get the reentry program and have those programs ready when you get out. The reentry programs and some more programs. You're classified as a fourth offender. You've been in and out of with your criminal history, in and out of state, and also your poor supervision. Also with opposition law enforcement in Natchitoches Parish, and also victims opposition. And I know Mr. Dice can tell you, you need to get those little bitty programs. You'll be coming back up here pretty quick. You have to write in and you'll come back. But today my vote is going to be to deny because of these programs and stuff that you have failed. I don't see the programs there that you should have had. And after that lengthy of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Cox, I've listened intently to both of my colleagues. This is a very difficult case, but because of your age, because of the time that you've served, and because of the support that you have, it is my vote as well to grant your parole with the conditions as outlined by Ms. Jackson. Now you have 2 of 3 votes. I'm not sure. I'm going to need some staff support as to where that puts us with the 2 to 3 vote.
Mr. Marabella, give me a minute. We're looking at it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Cox, have you completed pre-release?
Pre-release?
Yes, sir, pre-release.
I tried to get into it, but I didn't never let me get into it. There's a lot of programs I try to get into, but they just
He has not completed pre-release.
I have not.
Mr. Marabella, you would be denied.
Mr. Cox, since you haven't completed pre-release, you need a unanimous vote and you didn't get that today, so your parole is denied.
Thank you.
Good luck to you, sir.
Okay, I mean, frankly, I don't really have any more clarity as to what happened. He starts off the parole hearing by saying that the DA told him to make that statement, and I don't. The DA said that he was supposed to make the statement that she wanted him to kill him to rob him and also as showed before for the inheritance. But hey, wouldn't that only go more towards maybe she's saying the truth that the DA supposedly asked him to make that statement? Now, There is some information. We'll just do this quickly because I really, it's the whole thing to me is kind of just confusing. It is all circumstantial evidence pretty much. But circumstantial evidence in the way that she is just such an idiot. And you can kind of get the sense of how, use the word idiot, has just, both of them don't seem very intelligent, and both of them had bad interviews. And I can't believe Jim Wise stopped him from getting parole because he didn't have that program, which is just funny how these things work. So this is just a quick summary again. It's like a nice little summary to remember what we're talking about. So the victim of the homicide was William Sykes, who is the husband of Elbertine Sykes, who we saw earlier. They're having been married since March of 1998, so they're kind of newlyweds. The defendant had previously been married to Mrs. Sykes, so he was married to her, so they're exes. Vivian, the defendant's twin sister, testified that in early 1999, the defendant had lived with her in Fresno, Texas, and in April of that year, Mrs. Sykes had visited the defendant in Miss Cahee's Texas home. So like, she went to his house, I guess their affair or whatever. Miss Cahee indicated that during Mrs. Sykes' stay, the defendant and Mrs. Sykes had become, I guess this is a fancy word for intimate, and Mrs. Sykes had referred to the defendant as her husband. So now she's referring to the ex as her husband. So Miss Cahee testified that the defendant told her he was still in love with Mrs. Sykes and the two were going to get back together. At some point in early 1999, the defendant moved out of Miss Cahee's Texas residence. He moved out of his twin sister's residence. In June 1999, he called her from Alexandria, Louisiana, and told her that Elbertine wanted him to kill her husband. Ms. Cahee testified that the defendant was upset by Mrs. Sykes' request. So, what's interesting about this case, remember how he had a shorter sentence, right? He didn't have life, but he was sentenced to a life sentence actually by the jury, and he won his appeal. The appeal that he won, was a statement was made in court that they found was hearsay, I think, in the appeal. And because of that, they said that that it was overturned. And so as a result, the defendant's conviction must be set aside, a sentence vacated, and remanded for a new trial. So it's not often we've covered a lot of appeals, and we see very few that are successful. His was, and they didn't mention in the parole hearing, but my guess, the reason he doesn't have life is because they probably took a plea deal. And that's why he has a good time date in like maybe 10 years even, but we'll probably see him again for parole. And then what else is there to discuss? There's really not much more here. There is a lot actually, but I like you can go through the actual court transcripts, the actual cross-examination, and it is interesting, but I don't know how much any of us have the bandwidth to keep going. This has been a long hearing. My, I guess, summary takeaway is that I have little doubt that she's actually guilty. When you get down to the fact that she's having an affair with her husband, there are the witnesses that says that she wanted him to kill him, but the just the weird things about like about the anonymous caller that says his truck is left outside was identified by this location. And remember, the detectives already found the truck. She didn't know it, and she just wanted them to find his body. There was something else I read in here that was interesting, was that was said in appeal, was that the prosecutor said I go hunting and I would never go hunting with a white sweater. And he was found with that white sweater that was left nearby, which was like just more proof that he had never gone hunting. Remember, the story is he went hunting with a nephew. They didn't know which nephew. No nephew came up to say that he went hunting with him. He was then found unalive, with a shotgun blast to the head. His shotgun was found 2-3 feet away, which the coroner said would have been impossible. And then she had the motive being that she was having a fling with her ex-husband, and the ex-husband drove there, and the ex-husband testified. But it's strange. I don't think she's innocent. It's bizarre that she's still claiming she's innocent, but she kind of gives off those wacky vibes, if you ask me. Just my opinion. And he didn't seem all that too great either. I was surprised they would parole him. It was like he took a life. He kind of didn't take accountability. In my opinion, didn't show remorse. Talking on that note, the victim, good job for her coming out there and saying a great piece to keep this man locked up. I don't really get how you could parole him, but there you have it. Also interesting that the parole project was not representing him. Like, how do they pick and choose? Is it he doesn't qualify? I don't know, actually. Isn't that interesting? But there you have it. Thank you, Richard, for connecting the dots. And with that,